You know, when we think about war, we usually picture clear lines, nations and their armies. But every so often, a force comes along that just completely blurs those lines. An organization that isn't a state, but somehow commands the power of one. This is the story of HEZBOLLAH'S arsenal. It's the story of how a group of guerrilla fighters became one of the most powerful non-state militaries in the world.
Our story really starts with just a number, 150,000. On its own, it's just a figure, right? But in the heart of the Middle East, this number, it casts a very long shadow. It basically defines the razor-thin line between a fragile peace and all-out war.
Because that is the estimated number of rockets and missiles in HEZBOLLAH'S arsenal. A stockpile so massive, it's bigger than what many actual countries have. And this isn't just a random collection of weapons, it's a strategic reality, built methodically over decades with one very clear purpose in mind.
To really understand this power, we have to look at the first chapter of their playbook. And it's a chapter written not with ink, but with fire. It's a strategy built not on hitting a specific target, but on overwhelming, well, everything.
Okay, so let's break this down. You've got everything from really simple, short-range rockets to more powerful ones like the Fajr 5. But the strategy, it's brutally direct. Launch so many, so fast, that even a super sophisticated system like Israel's Iron Dome just can't keep up. The goal here isn't about precision, it's about paralyzing an entire nation through sheer chaotic volume.
But you know, every story has a turning point. And for this arsenal, the story evolved. It went from being a blunt instrument of chaos to something more like a surgeon's scalpel. And this is where the entire nature of the threat fundamentally changes. And I mean, just look at the contrast here. On one side, you've got quantity, sheer numbers. On the other, you have quality, which comes from these precision-guided missiles or PGMs. We're talking about weapons like the Fateh 110, which can reportedly hit targets deep inside Israel with pinpoint accuracy. So the threat is no longer just widespread disruption, it's the potential for a surgical strike on, say, a military headquarters, a power plant, or a key government building.
And this really gets to the heart of it. Experts all agree that this evolution is the real game changer. It's what takes HEZBOLLAH from being a force of harassment to a force that can inflict strategic, calculated pain. It completely alters the military equation for the entire region.
But the evolution didn't just stop in the skies. The battlefield itself began to expand, moving into dimensions you can't even see, preparing for a kind of conflict that would be fought on multiple fronts all at once.
So underneath the surface, a whole different war was being prepared, a massive network of tunnels, and they were designed for three key reasons. First, surprise attacks, allowing fighters to pop up deep inside enemy territory. Second, as fortified bunkers to shield their forces and weapons from airstrikes. And third, to turn any ground invasion into a three-dimensional nightmare, a battle fought in a deadly underground maze.
And the threat doesn't stop there. It actually extends out to sea and up into the sky. Advanced anti-ship missiles, like the C-802, put naval ships and even those critical offshore gas platforms at risk. At the same time, Iranian-supplied drones give them eyes in the sky for spying and for attacks. What you end up with is a true multi-domain military machine.
So all this raises a pretty big question, right? How does a group that isn't a state build and maintain such a sophisticated military? Well, the answer lies down a shadowy path of logistics, all funded and supplied by a very powerful patron.
The lifeblood of this entire military apparatus is Iran. It's Tehran that provides the money, the training, and most importantly, the advanced weapons and the high-tech components that make up this whole arsenal. But these weapons don't just magically appear. They travel along a secret network, a supply chain that snakes its way through Iraq and Syria, moving by air, by land, and by sea. Their final stop is Lebanon, and this critical supply chain is the main target of what Israel calls its campaign between the wars, a persistent, shadowy effort of airstrikes and other operations aimed at cutting this very lifeline.
Okay, so all these different pieces, the thousands of rockets, the precision missiles, the tunnels, the foreign support, they all come together to create one single overarching reality, a very dangerous and very precarious balance of power.
There's a name for this reality. It's called a balance of terror. It's a pretty cold, calculated state of affairs where the main reason for peace is the shared understanding that going to war would be catastrophically destructive for everybody involved. Each side knows that if they attack, the response will be absolutely devastating.
And so this is really the key point. HEZBOLLAH'S entire arsenal serves as its ultimate deterrent. It creates a tense quiet, an equilibrium that's built not on trust, but on the certainty of mutual ruin. And it's a kind of peace that's felt not just in command centers, but in the daily lives of civilians who have to live under the weight of this constant, silent threat.
Which leaves us with one final and pretty unsettling thought. This peace, if you can even call it that, is held together by a threat. It's a stability that's built entirely on fear. And you have to ask yourself, in a balance this fragile, how long can deterrence really hold before one side decides the risk is finally worth taking?
At Geotectonics, our mission is to uncover these profound tectonic shifts, offering clarity in a world of complexity. If this analysis deepened your understanding, please like this video to support our work, share it with others who seek real insight, and subscribe to Geotectonics to ensure you never miss our next deep dive. We'll continue to explore the crucial geopolitical movements that define our time. Thank you for joining us.